What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Johnny Mack here. Just wanted to give you a heads up that if you are looking for a community that is open to discussion as far as mentorship, conservation, the wild, becoming a better person, and all of that, there is a group for you on Facebook, and it is called Soul Seekers. Soul Seekers, we are all about making ourselves a better person. We're all about making sure hunting lasts for generations to come and encouraging people to get plugged in. Whether you are someone who has something to give or someone who needs to soak it up like a sponge, this is a community for you, and I strongly encourage you that if you're on Facebook to join Soul Seekers, and if you're not on Facebook, hop on there just for that group. It is only going to be as powerful as we all make it. And so just remember that life happens for you, it doesn't happen to you, and that you can't outgive good. You can't outgive good, people. I want you to understand that, and I want you to believe it, because when we believe that and we lead with courage and we lead with intention, lives are changed, lives are transformed, just like on this podcast, transformation through primal adventure. Be blessed. Enjoy this episode. Talk soon. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Soulful Hunter Podcast. I'm your host, Johnny Mack. Through this podcast, I'm on a mission to transform lives through primal adventure and to spread my mission of mentorship as conservation. This podcast is powered by Washington Backcountry, a resource for all hunters, both new and old. To find out more about Washington Backcountry, go to wabackcountry.com or search for Washington Backcountry on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. The Soulful Hunter Podcast is also proudly presented by the Crazy Elk Company. Based out of the state of Washington with products made in America, they are providing solutions with gear to problems you didn't even know you had. Their tag wallet is one of those solutions, and I had the pleasure of using it on all of my hunts this last year, and it is now a mainstay in my kill kit. The tag wallet is a water-resistant zippered pouch that comes with its own reusable zip ties to safely and securely store your notch tag for quick and easy access. For more information, go to crazyelkcompany.com and use the code SOULFUL with a capital S to save 20% at checkout. Be blessed, everyone, and as always, stay soulful. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Soulful Hunter Podcast. I'm your host, Johnny Mack, and today we are bringing you a huge dose of freedom. And we have just an amazing American warrior and patriot, Greg Anderson. For those of you who do not know Greg Anderson, he was a Port of Seattle police officer that spoke out against lockdowns and different things that was happening last year, and at the cost of his job. And so we're going to be diving into it because I've been getting a lot of different messages when I posted some stuff on social media about forced mandates and all this stuff, and people were like, well, can we get back to hunting? I was like, well, wait a minute. Hunting isn't going to be around if we are being told what we can and cannot do. So, Greg, thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, this is awesome. Thanks for having me, man. It's interesting. We just ran into each other at a store and connected, and now I'm sitting in your house. But I live 23 minutes away from here, so we're building our tribe, man.
That's right. That is what it's all about, building that community, that tribe. Greg, we were talking before this podcast, and I was like, okay, we got to stop because all this stuff that I'm asking you and we're chatting about is great. Give the listeners, for those of you who do not know, because I don't, your reach is huge, but not everyone knows you and your story. So can you give a little background on yourself?
Yeah, so I grew up in Snohomish, Washington, where we're sitting right now, actually up off of Dubuque. So literally like 5 minutes from here. And just a normal upbringing. After high school, I had no idea what I wanted to do, so I just went into the military. And I went into the military in 1999, and it wasn't like, I'm always very honest about my military service because at 18 years old, I didn't feel like some patriot, some burning desire to serve my country. The truth was, I was 18 years old, I knew I hated school, and I didn't know what the next step of my journey was. So I started talking to the recruiters, went into the Army. And it was just by chance I said, you know what, if I'm going to do one enlistment, I should do something really hard and difficult. And I don't know why that thought even came into my head as an 18-year-old man, but I decided if I'm going to do this, I should challenge myself. And so I put myself in I got the option 40, so I went into the Ranger Regiment. And for those of you who don't know, the Ranger Regiment is the Army's premier light infantry unit. You have to go to airborne school. You have to go through, it was RIP when I went through, so the Ranger Indoc program. And then, I mean, it's like all the stuff you see on Surviving the Cut with the Navy SEALs and the Rangers. It's all the crawling around in the mud and doing log drills and land nav and all the different kinds of warfare training. And it was almost like a game. You know what I mean? It was really hard and it was challenging, and I grew a lot as a man, and I met a lot of cool people that I'm friends with and close with to this day. But it wasn't until 9/11 when it's like, oh, okay, this is no longer a game. This is why we have put all of this energy into the training and becoming capable, and all the different missions that we used to do stateside with fixed wing and rotary wing. And then 9/11 hit, and it completely changed my perspective. I was 9/11. I was actually just finishing Ranger School. It was the last day of Ranger School, and I went. The last day of Ranger School, you put your parachutes on down at Eglin Air Force Base, and then you jump back into Fort Benning, turn your gear in, and you graduate. And they said, "Hey, drop your parachutes and come into the auditorium. We have something to talk about." And we went into the auditorium and saw the planes hitting the towers. So we knew it was like at that moment, oh, we're going to war.
It's go time.
It's go time, you know? And almost immediately we were deployed, and then that became my life for the next decade. I ended up doing 14 deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan, and it was a wild ride, but it was really good. Like I wouldn't have changed how things played out for anything. The ups and the downs of combat and living that lifestyle and gathering that perspective from living on the other side of the world and seeing how other people, like what their reality is in comparison to ours. And it was a really important journey to help me grow into who I am today. But I ended up getting married. My wife ended up she became pregnant with our first daughter in 2009, and she's like, "Hey," because it was just deployment after deployment after deployment. She's like, "If we're going to do the family thing, I think it's time to put this behind you." And I had to agree with her. I always thought, like, man, how are guys over here with families back home?
Mm.
Because if I got, and dude, I came to the conclusion that I would be killed in combat. Like, and a lot of guys did. That was just the normal mentality over there. And I think that helped you cope with the understanding that there's a good chance that you might get whacked on this deployment. So if you just come to terms with that early on, even though it sounds kind of dark, what it really is, it's actually freeing, because it's like, okay, I'm not worried about it anymore. It's not if, it's when. So between now and then, I'm just going to live and do our operations and have a good time. And so after that, you know, after Jenny got pregnant, we decided to put that lifestyle behind us. And like a lot of soldiers, what's the next thing when they come home? It's law enforcement.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I wasn't drawn to law enforcement necessarily, but it was just that was kind of my circle. I knew a lot of people that had made that transition, so I said, okay, let's go into law enforcement. And I joined a federal agency. I was down in Los Angeles with them for about like 4.5 years, and then I transferred up to Washington State so I could be closer to family, and got hired by a local agency. And I was with the Port of Seattle Police Department. And I was with them all the way up until May 5th of 2020, and that's when I made the video. And so, and after that, my life took the most drastic turn ever, and it's been great.
Yeah, amazing.
It's been amazing.
Is that video actually still online?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
it's still, you can go onto my Instagram and listen to it. It was May 5th of 2020 when I posted it. But just a little backstory of the video. You know, I was in law enforcement for a decade, and talking to every single one of my coworkers, all the people that I would be in the lunchroom with, and then also like my coworkers from previous agencies down in Los Angeles, I didn't know one person, not one, that supported the lockdowns or thought it was a good idea. Now, I'm not speaking from a medical standpoint. I'm not talking about the validity of social distancing or the validity of the lockdowns from a medical standpoint. I'm speaking as a law enforcement officer. Our authority to enforce these things, we don't have the authority to do what the governors and the mayors were asking us to do. You can't arrest somebody for being at a public park with their child. You can't arrest somebody for surfing off of the coast of Malibu, California.
But yet these things were happening.
They were happening. And that's why I was appalled by what I was seeing, but it wasn't me. I wasn't out on the fringes like, oh, this guy's some right wing wacko. No, law enforcement is a very diverse group of people from all religious, political, like racial backgrounds, a very diverse group of people. Everybody I knew was like, what is going on? This is crazy. This isn't what we do. This isn't how our profession is supposed to be utilized by the government. We're in position to protect the community and enforce the laws. And now, as everybody saw, police officers were being used to enforce these mandates that were never legislated. And they would use the state of emergency as gray area,
And
right?
that's something that I want to talk about today.
So state of emergency, and there are things that happen like Hurricane Katrina, right? There are things that there's rules on the book where the governor can invoke state of emergency, and then certain rules can be implemented that can't be implemented outside of a state of emergency. But here's the caveat on that. The Washington state law is very clear that state of emergency powers can only be used for 30 days. Then it has to go to the legislation. And if they want to continue any of these mandates, it has to be legislated into law.
And it hasn't because they haven't held session.
No, but so that's the thing. They worked. Like there's so much dirty stuff that happened over the last 18 months. The governor every 30 days just kept saying, "All right, we're in another state of emergency. We're in another state of emergency. So 30 days, 30 days, 30 days." Well, if you look at the law and it says the governor has power to invoke state of emergency for 30 days, I think that's pretty clear to the citizens that he can't go beyond 30 days without it being legislated. That doesn't mean that you just get to do blocks of 30 days for the next 10 years of our lives. But that's what they did. And as we saw nationwide, police officers were being used as the henchmen to enforce all these mandates that they just arbitrarily came up with. And bro, if you listen to my video, I don't speak to COVID because I'm not a doctor. I'm not a virologist, right? I have opinions on that stuff, but my profession and my expertise was law enforcement. So that I even said that in the video. I said, listen, I'm not saying that the validity of the things that you are hearing about COVID is not true. This video is not about the virus. It's not about how dangerous it is. It's about how law enforcement officers are sworn to uphold and defend citizens' state constitutional rights and then the Constitution of the United States of America. And that's not something that we get to pick and choose on. That is black and white. The line is drawn here, and we can't do those things. But how many officers were doing those things? And it was infuriating to me because it's like, I know the profession. These are my people. Nobody supports it. But once they start to threaten your livelihood and your job and your ability to feed your kids, we're seeing cops do things that are outside of their moral and ethical scope. And for me, that's a slippery slope.
So I had a conversation yesterday with a police officer in Eastern Washington, and he was saying that his job is not to interpret the law. His job is to uphold the law. So whatever law is, he needs to uphold it. And yet, at the same time, what is it? Thomas Jefferson said, "Any unjust law, we have a duty to not follow."
Yep.
So, with that being said, I mean, it's coming down to it. And by the way, listeners, while you're listening to this podcast, just yesterday, King Inslee, the governor of the state of Washington, just mandated that I have to take the jab or I face termination. And my wife is a nurse and I'm a school teacher, and so we went from an income to now, because this is my freedom of choice of what goes into my body, that now I don't have a job because I'm not going to comply, nor will I consent.
Well, and that's what I'm telling everybody right now. Right now, And this is if you are for the vaccine or you are against the vaccine. I don't care where you stand on it from like a scientific perspective or a medical perspective. But the truth is, stripping people of their freedom to choose is wrong. If you want to get the vaccine, I don't care.
Yeah.
If you don't want to get the vaccine, I don't care. And that's what we have to move forward with. And like you saw in Italy, like a bunch of people are burning their vaccination cards in protest because they're saying like, yeah, I may have got the vaccine. I may have looked at the data and decided that this makes sense for me and my family, but you don't get to force everybody to do it.
Right.
Everybody should have that freedom of choice.
Right.
And now we have a government that has, I mean, this has been the biggest power grab in the history of our country. And everybody gets duped by saying, no, it's for your safety. It's for your safety. You're telling me that for them to make sure that you are safe and that you don't get sick,
Yeah.
they will let your children starve. They will let you lose this house that we're sitting in.
Or-
They will take everything away from you.
Such as my health care. So
Your
there-
health care. There you go.
So
Yeah.
therefore, my health insurance is gone because I don't conform to what they're forcing me
And
or
so
forcing people to do.
It's important right now more than ever for people to stand up and be vocal and support free choice.
Yeah.
I don't care if you're a Democrat or a Republican. I don't care if you're pro or anti. Like we as Americans, this country was founded on the ability to think for yourself and make choices for you and your family.
Yeah.
And now they're trying to take that away.
You know, the interesting thing is like as an educator, I see firsthand in the schools what it's like. Education, and that I truly believe is why it's indoctrination. They don't teach you about how to think. Everything's compliance. Do this or else.
Yeah,
Do
yeah.
this or else. Act this way or else. And then they're pulling back. It's like, well, we can't suspend kids or put them in detention as much. And so then this rule of law is I'm not a police officer, and yet there's expectations of how to behave or speak in certain social settings and interrupting the educational process. And yet we're not teaching kids what the actual education process is, how the tax system works.
Yeah.
Taxes are theft. You know, and the
Yeah.
minute that inflation is going up, that's theft.
Mhm.
Now I'm not getting paid enough for the amount of money that I have to pay for different things. I have no control. And yet when it comes to me being represented by the, and quote, the people we vote in, and that's a whole nother conversation, is okay, it is we the people were elected by the people. They are to be
To
a
govern for
representation,
the people.
to govern
Yeah.
for the people. It is not the king and all the minions down below.
Well, these politicians are drunk on their power.
Yeah.
And everybody sees it everybody sees it across the fence on both sides of the fence. They are not in position to serve us anymore. Because that's what politics used to be. Like you were a farmer, you were a teacher, you were a police officer, you would take a position as a mayor or on a city council or even all the way up to like governor, and it's basically a term of service.
Well, it's called public service.
That's what yeah.
We're public servants.
And then and then after your term of public service, you go back to your whatever you did before that, right?
Right.
We got people like our sitting president. I almost dropped an F-bomb. We don't swear on your show, right?
No, you go ahead. Hey,
Yeah.
I'm not into censorship anymore. I put an explicit tag on my podcast.
I'll tell you what. If you don't like F-bombs, don't tune into my podcast. But I mean, our sitting president is a career politician. That's all, that's all he's ever done. And this is a realization that I've come to, and this is just in the last couple months. It's like you have soldiers, you have police officers, you have school teachers, you have entrepreneurs, you have small business owners. You have all of these people in our society that make society go around, that make everything function the way that it's supposed to function. And now, for the first time ever, all the people that are calling the shots to run this society with all of these different facets and all of these different people have never participated in society themselves. They've never been soldiers. They've never been entrepreneurs. They've never been teachers. They've never been part of the worker bees. And if you're not part of the worker bees and then you want to govern the worker bees, it's like leadership 101 in the military is ask no one to do something you are not willing to do yourself, right? And that's not a hard concept to grasp. But for whatever reason now, we've allowed these weasels to work their way to the top. You think Gavin Newsom has ever worked as a clerk at a gas station?
Never.
You know what I'm saying? Do you think Nancy Pelosi has? Do you think Jay Inslee has? No, they go to some Ivy League school, they get a degree in law, and then they go right into politics, and they've never experienced the real American grind. And now they're telling people that I've been on the grind since I was 18 years old, right? And now I'm 40. And now they're telling us what we have to do, what we can't do, what we're going to do. Like telling me like because I own a gym now. That's like my primary income. And I teach CrossFit we have CrossFit there. I don't run the CrossFit classes, and then I teach the jiu-jitsu portion of the gym. And trying to mandate, well, how many people can be there, and they have to be masked up. And it's like, fuck you. Okay? Let me make something perfectly clear. I built this gym from the ground up. It's on my private property. I developed the curriculum. I teach the curriculum. Like, this is 100% mine. I spent a decade of my life through my 20s fighting for people's freedom. That's what they sold to us.
Right.
Operation Iraqi Freedom and Enduring Freedom. And I'm going to the other side of the planet over and over and over for people's freedom. And now you're telling me what I can and can't do on my own property? No, that's not going to happen. And if you think that I fought hard overseas, I'll show you what fighting hard is. If you think you're going to take away what I have here that supports my family and feeds my children. And a lot of men feel this way.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of women feel this way. A lot of people in general feel how we're feeling right now. And it's like, I'm hoping that we can just share conversation and we can have these discussions and we can push podcasts out and we can do interviews and we can build networks and people will use their voice to turn around what's happening. But if we don't, I can't imagine this ending any other way than violence. Because do you think that the politicians would ever have any type of self-reflection or humility and look at themselves in the mirror and be like, you know what? This last year, we kind of conducted ourselves in a way that was probably too harsh, and we probably overstepped our boundaries. Of course not. Those type of people are narcissists. They don't have the ability to reflect.
I'm going to jump in here real quick, and I asked that question to my father when my mom left him, and that's a whole nother story. But I asked him, I was like,
follow-up episode.
It was definitely a follow-up episode. I was like, did you not have any self-reflection and being like, whoa, my marriage isn't healthy? My marriage isn't good? And he was like, no. And I'm like,
just one word answer, no.
I was like, your wife left you and she's scared for her life. And you're saying, I thought everything was good. And so that is the level of narcissism in which we're dealing with at these governmental levels.
Yeah.
And no, they don't think like a you and me, where we're in here and we're having a cup of coffee and we're going to be like, okay, I'm thinking upon my ways, and now I get to correct them if I've done anything that is not just, that's not right, that's not pure-hearted, right? Because we're not out here trying to trip people or put sticks in people's spokes so they crash on their bikes. Like, we're literally, I want the best for you. Live and let live. You do you, and don't infringe upon me.
Yeah.
That's all I want. And so going back to the whole, the jab, it's like, you want to take it? Awesome. Don't force it on me.
Well, and that's what's so dirty about this is they've manipulated people to believe that if I choose that the COVID vaccine is not the best option for myself and my family, I'm endangering you. I'm spreading the Delta variant to you. Mm-hmm. I'm causing super bugs to grow. And like, they're doing this on purpose. It's divide and conquer. Like, think about it. For the longest time, the profession of law enforcement, which I was immersed in, there wasn't a bunch of division. There wasn't a bunch of hate and discontent. And then over the last 2 years, it's like, oh no, police hate black guys. They're always killing young black men. And then, that now it's the transgender thing. And transgenders are being discriminated against, and then now it's stop Asian hate, and it's like, listen, guys, I'm 40 years old. I've traveled all over the world. I have friends that are gay. I have friends that are black. I have friends that are Asian. I have friends from all different like socioeconomic levels. We're all on the same team, and most people get that. Most people don't judge you based on your sexuality or the color of your skin. Most people judge you on your character.
Right.
That's what we're looking for in people. What's your character? You know? And that narrative has been twisted to the point where a lot of people believe that everybody hates them.
Mm-hmm.
And that causes division. And it's just completely untrue.
These stories that people make up in their own
Yeah.
minds.
And perception is reality, right? So if you're a young black man that lives in, say, like, I mean, I used to work in Compton all the time, so use that for an example. Like, if you're growing up in Compton and every time you pick up your phone or every time you turn on the television, it's like, hey, police officers want to kill young black men, right? That perception becomes your reality. And now you think that. And it's like, it's scary that the forces that be through social media with big tech or through like the major news networks can push this narrative and make this people's reality, and they're making everybody hate each other. And it's like, most people want the same. Most people want to prosper. Most people want like their children to do well. Most people want to seek happiness and love. And we can give that to each other. But if we get caught up in all of this back and forth, what is the inevitable result? It's everybody hating each other.
Right.
And social media has been one of the biggest tools to do that to us.
Oh,
And it's like everybody talks shit to everybody about everything. And when has that ever been the human experience?
right.
You know what I'm saying?
If I was let's say I was at the cafeteria at my school, I'm a middle school teacher,
Yeah.
and every single student was just ripping on each other for all the decisions that they made, whether it's how you combed your hair, what you put on your body, what food you chose, and everyone's just like, "That's stupid. You're an idiot. What are you thinking?"
And it's a weird place. It's a weird reality that we've arrived at as a society, because never in my life have I had someone come up to me in a grocery store or something and be like, "Hey, just so you know, I think you're a fucking idiot." That's never happened, but it happens online every single day,
Right.
you know? And it's like we're empowering the weakest members of our society to feel like they should be able to be confrontational and confront men and women that they would never confront in a real scenario.
Right.
And it's just bizarre to me. But we're also seeing that with our politicians. Like, they're being super aggressive. And I was about to say passive aggressive, but it's not passive anymore.
Not anymore.
You know,
It's in front
like
of your face.
I watched Inslee's speech when he talked about children, and I had to pull all three of my kids out of public school, and I found a private school that doesn't require them to have masks at the tune of $20,000. So I have to pay $20K this year so my kids can go to school without a mask on, right?
Yeah.
Even though kids aren't dying of COVID, even though the news says otherwise. Go look at the data. And Inslee stands up to his podium and he goes, we tried to get people to mask up. We tried to get people to get vaccinated, and your guys' shortcomings and your inability to do what was asked of you has forced my hand, and now I have to bring masks back to the public schools.
He just shames us.
And it's like, are you trying to fucking bully me? You know what I mean? Like, that's what it felt like. You're standing up on that podium and you're talking down to me like I'm just some dummy. I gave you a shot and you didn't do what I said, so now I'm going to do this to you. Bro, you're not my fucking parent. You're not my dad.
Yeah.
I don't have to fucking sit here and allow you to give speak to me like I'm a child and implement all these directives that are going to impact my children and my business.
If you're a married man, at what point is giving your wife an ultimatum healthy for your marriage?
Exactly, dude. That's exactly right.
Do this or else.
Ultimatums don't work. Period. You know what I mean? Unless you're ready to rule with an iron fist.
Yeah.
But that's not how the American government is supposed to work.
Yeah.
You know?
I want to read a quote real quick. And this is from Dr. Niemöller, came out of Europe during World War II. There's a famous quote I've shared shared this on the podcast before. It says, "First they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak." And
Powerful.
this is so powerful. So I have Jewish heritage. I am Jewish, and so showing papers or any of this stuff, that is one. Might as well put a gold star on me.
Yeah.
And people forget. They're like, "Oh, this never happened in America. Never happened in America." Well, the Puyallup Fair, the Washington State Fairgrounds, was used as an internment camp for Japanese Americans.
Yeah.
And that was only, what, 60 years ago or something like that? Maybe 80 years ago? It's a life.
Bro, the people that think, oh, it can't, over here, over there, like, this is America. It can't happen here. It's just like all the stuff going on in Afghanistan right now, right? You're watching families get ripped apart. You're watching people desperately fleeing for their lives. They're so desperate, they're clinging on to the running gear of aircraft that are going to be flying at 30,000 feet, right? That's a death sentence.
Yeah.
And they know that's a death sentence, but I'm going to give this a try over the alternative. Think about where you would have to be mentally to flee something that's so terrible that you would hold on to the landing gear of a C-17.
Well, it reminds me of 9/11.
Yeah.
Watching the people holding hands and jumping out of the
right?
building.
But so my point to this is violence and chaos and tyranny and terror, this is part of the human condition. We will always face this to a certain extent. And there are people that when they rise to the top, they like being at the top. And they will do anything and everything to ensure that they get to stay there. And if you think that that is not a possibility because we're in America, guess who is in our political elite leadership? Human beings.
Right.
Some human beings are good and some are evil. Or like I just read the Gulag Archipelago. I don't know if you've read that.
I have not yet.
By Alexander Solzhenitsyn. I think I might have messed that up. But he talks about how they just rounded everybody up and put them in forced labor camps and whatnot. And one thing that he said, he's like, there are a lot of people that I think could get pulled either direction based on their life circumstances and based on what they're asked to do and when they're asked to do it. Because he reflected, because he was part of the military, but he got to a point where he was too powerful and they thought, man, if this guy ever wanted to like turn against us, he could rally a lot of people behind him. So guess what? He's going to the Gulag too. And he was reflecting and he's like, what if it went the other direction? And they asked me
To join them?
To join them and start implementing and start enforcing this stuff. What could that have been a possibility? It could have, right? And so that's where the reflection and the looking at yourself in the mirror and asking who you are and drawing hard lines on where you stand is important, because it's the frog in the pot analogy. They just turn the heat up a little bit and you're like, okay, it's getting a little warm, but I'm good. Oh, it's getting hot. Oh, now I'm being boiled and there's nothing that I didn't stand up in time, right? And that's why hard lines are important. And I drew a hard line and I got fired for it. But I'll tell you, getting fired for drawing that hard line was the best thing that ever happened to me.
Mm-hmm.
My life has shifted in a manner that I never even thought was possible. And I tell that story because I want people to understand that whatever your 9 to 5 is, whatever pays your paycheck, that's not the end all be all.
No.
There's other stuff out there. And if you believe in yourself and you're smart and you're a hard worker, don't cower to these people because they're threatening you. We're Americans. We don't cower to threats.
So this is what I was going to talk about is courage.
Mm-hmm.
So you're known for saying courage is courageous. Or
Courage is contagious.
Yeah, sorry. Courage is contagious. I've always was raised that courage is the first known quality of a man.
Mm-hmm.
And the interesting thing is courage is a muscle that has to be flexed. In order to actually use your courage and apply your courage, you have to train it. You have to flex it. You have to work it out. And that happens through opposition. It happens through uncomfortable situations, standing up to the bully. all these different things. And in my life, and this is going all the way back to my childhood through, to where I am now, to the point in which I said, okay, I am not going to live a life of fear or judgment or guilt or anything else. I'm changing the way I live. I never flexed my courage muscle.
Mm-hmm.
And that is something that I believe is lacking in America. I hate to say a bunch of people are cowards, and yet if you're not courageous,
You're a coward.
what are you?
Yeah, And I used to be so hopeful that, man, my fellow Americans, we would never get trampled on. If politicians, like if you would have painted this scenario 2 years ago, I'd be like, politicians would be out getting tarred and feathered.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
But it seems like you can't even get access to them now.
Yeah, I know, right? But I figured that my fellow Americans would be, especially in the profession of law enforcement, that would be standing up in unison saying, no, absolutely not. And, they always say, like, well, when they're coming for our guns, the police and the military will side with the people. You hear that a lot, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, will they?
Well,
will they? Because I don't know anymore.
Because the dichotomy is that everyone has to take care of themselves.
Yeah.
And so people are going to do whatever they need to do to take care of themselves.
Well, and the people that put themselves before the people that they're sworn to serve, they have no business wearing the badge or the uniform.
And protect.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I don't know where this goes. And again, I would give anything for this, like, political unrest in this COVID era to kind of die off and get back to normal. But I don't think that the political elite will allow that.
No.
Because they have gained so much power in the last 18 months.
Feels good.
Feels good. I
Oh,
can do whatever I want,
yeah.
Did you see Gavin Newsom on Oprah? He's like, do you know what it feels like to be the governor of California? I'm giving $1 million checks out. You take the jab, you're in the lottery, I can cut you $1 million check. And it's like, and he's like smoking and joking like this is some game.
Yeah.
It's like, actually, you're not giving any money out, okay? That's taxpayers' money. So what are we even talking? Stop acting like a big shot. Sit down and shut up. But no, we don't have anybody. Yeah, we don't have anybody keeping these people in check anymore. And I just feel like the pendulum, I mean, we always come back to baseline one way or another.
Mm-hmm.
And if we can do it with our voices and we can do it with our votes, cool. But we're coming back to baseline one way or the other. And what will determine how we do that is how these people conduct themselves.
Yeah.
But if they keep conducting themselves in the manner that they are, like, I am not going to leave a country for my children to inherit that is shittier than the one that I inherited.
Yeah.
Us as fathers, we can't do that.
Yeah.
We have to do everything in our power to ensure that our children are afforded the same rights and the same liberties and the same opportunities as we were.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not willing to fight for that, what are you willing to fight for?
So I always talk about on this podcast, you have to identify what you want.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you don't actually know what you want, you're willing to sway and go anywhere. It's
That's
like,
right.
Shooting a bow at a target. If you don't have that target, your arrow's going to go anywhere.
Yeah.
So you get laser focused, be like, okay, no, this is what I want, and then you're able to get that target. Nowadays, people, do you want safety?
Yeah.
Do you want comfort?
Mm-hmm.
Do you want freedom? Because I crave freedom. I want justice. I want freedom. I want liberty. I want to be able to live my life the way I want to live it and not be told what to do.
As long as you're not infringing on others, that's the entire American dream. That's exactly what our country was founded on, of religious freedom and constitutional rights. Because everywhere else on planet Earth, you get some dictator or king at the top directing everybody how they want to live. And there was a group of people that said, you know what? Let's try something different.
Yeah.
That's what made America so great.
Well, and going back to the whole taxes thing, it was all taxation without representation.
Yeah.
You can tax us or do different things if we give you our approval and we have representation. But the minute that you are not representing the people is the minute that you're not doing what you're supposed to. And that's...
Bro, I'm going to go off on a tangent for a second because the tax stuff is so out of control. We've allowed the government to just nickel and dime us whenever they want, wherever they want, and nobody's doing anything about it. And it's like, again, the frog in the pot. They're just turning up the heat everywhere on every aspect of our life,
Mhm.
right? I sold a car to a guy 2 weeks ago. Antique 31 Cadillac that I inherited from my dad that's literally in pieces, right? And all the parts were just put inside of the car, like in the actual cab,
Yeah, like here it
right?
is.
And so I told people, I'm like, hey, I'm not a car guy. What you see is what you get. All right. And me and this guy, I was never going to do anything with this. I don't know how to build cars. I'm not a car guy. And so I found a guy who restores old Cadillacs. He actually knew my dad from back in the day when they were in the car world together. So it was kind of cool, right?
Mhm.
And I sold it to him. I sold it to him for $3,500 because it's a tremendous amount of work. And I just needed to move this thing. It sat in my garage for years.
Mhm.
So I have to go with him to the department of, or to a licensing place because it doesn't have a title. My dad lost the title, or maybe he never had it. I don't know. So we apply for a lost title, and they say, so I see here that the receipt says that you paid $3,500. And the guy goes, yeah, that's what I paid. I don't know about that.
The state values it way more.
So right out of the gates, this lady is now questioning my integrity and calling me a liar, right? That's fucking offensive,
Mhm.
right? If someone calls me a liar to my face, that should be a fight.
Yeah.
And I said, whoa, what do you mean? What do you mean you don't know about that? Just come out and say what you're saying. Come out and say what you're suggesting. What do you mean you don't know about that? Do you need to see a wire transfer or something? Because first of all, it's none of your fucking business. But second of all, why are you saying I don't know about that? And now I'm the crazy one, right? And she goes, whoa, listen. Like when we look at when I pull the value from some almanac from 1960 or whatever the fuck, it's like it says that the 31 Cadillac is a range from 9,000 at the low end to 128,000 at the high end for fully restored. I said, okay, I don't care what your fucking book says. I sold it for $3,500. And she goes, well, he's going to have to pay taxes on $9,000. So it's not only the taxes that they're stealing from you on every single interaction and every single sale that we're involved in. Now they just arbitrarily create numbers
Right.
and you have to pay that.
And it's not like that car didn't have taxes paid on it in the first place.
100 times
they
probably.
tax it no matter how many times that transfers. It's getting taxed.
It's this piece of metal in my garage that I own, and I can't sell it to you for what you and I decide works for us.
Yeah.
What if I like you and I do want to give you a deal? What if I'm rich and you're poor and I want to sell it to you for $10? It's mine.
Even if you give it to them, they still have to pay
Yeah.
taxes.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Like,
It's like at what point do you turn law-abiding citizens into criminals because we don't want to participate in your game?
well, and that's a whole other podcast, but they're on the verge of turning people into criminals because they're not doing anything about actual criminals anymore.
Yeah.
Washington State has become an absolute cesspool for crime and drugs. And then all this new legislation that doesn't allow police officers to do what are called Terry stops anymore. You can't do a Terry stop. And if anyone's listening, you're a police officer anywhere in the country, Terry stop is like Police Academy 101. It's like, I think this person may be involved in a crime. Hey, come here, sir. You're not free to leave. I have to ask you a couple questions. You can't do that anymore in Washington State. You can only stop someone once you've established probable cause that they committed the offense. But the thing is, probable cause, that is the element that needs to be met to put someone in handcuffs and take them to jail. You don't arrive at probable cause without an investigation. And they're saying you can't do investigatory stops anymore. So you can't conduct law enforcement anymore in Washington State.
Yeah.
And it's just like they're beating us on every single angle, like taxes, no more police officers, we're going to fire you if you don't get the jab, on and on and on. And it's like, at what point are people going to break?
Well-
I've had 2 methamphetamine addicts steal shit from my gym on 2 different occasions this last year. And being someone that was a criminal investigator for a decade, I caught them both. Not on scene, but I pulled surveillance footage. I watched Offer Up to look for my stuff. I nailed both of them down. Who they are, where they live. You think the police did anything?
No.
Nothing. The second guy that I caught, this is his 5th felony of 2021 alone. He's been contacted by the sheriff's office on 142 separate occasions.
What?
Think about this. And now he's stealing from me. And he stole a 17-year-old girl's purse out of her car when she was inside my facility doing a CrossFit workout.
Mm.
What are we supposed to do as men? You know, her dad and I should beat this dude. That's what should happen. The cops aren't going to have any type of deterrence for criminal activity. Okay. At what point do we do this as men?
Yeah, social justice. There's no
Yeah.
but at the same time, let's talk about the pendulum swing of the other side. Social justice of people that say, okay, we support mandates of the jab. Okay, they think social justice is that you should lose your job because you're not complying for the safety and health of others.
And if you say that, you're a fucking coward. That's it. You know what I'm saying? Like, everybody's just falling in line with the narrative. They're cherry picking data because I can provide a bunch of doctors that will support not getting the jab.
Mm-hmm.
I can provide a bunch of nurses that have seen things happen in the ICU that is concerning. And we don't get to have a voice on the other side. It's nope, sit down, shut up, listen to Dr. Fauci and our cherry picked data. And if you don't like it, we don't care. And then you have all these, this is the most bizarre aspect of what we're seeing in society, is that you get these people that they're like, I'm on Team Fauci.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, they're willing to go to war for this guy. And
He's-
they're like going out and being foot soldiers and shaming people and like posting on their page about how fucking stupid they are and all this stuff. And it's like, no. You do you and I'll do me. It's literally that simple. And if you think the vaccine is a great thing to put in your body that prevents you from dying of COVID, that's great. I don't care. So why do you care if I do it?
Right.
You know?
Well, the interesting thing is, and going back to the whole representation of we the people and the power lies in the people's hands and all this stuff, is you have a bunch of people that work for these different health organizations. They're not elected officials. And yet, like CDC says, hey, we recommend this. Well, people take that as the law. You know,
yeah.
like,
Yep.
CDC hasn't mandated their employees get the vax.
No, I know.
You know, so at what point is it
Or the White House, by the way.
right? Rules for
thee, but not for, or yeah,
rules for me, or no rules for thee, but not for me. Yeah,
Can it be any clearer what's happening?
yeah.
You know? And so there's something that I always talk about on my show, and in the military we called it wargaming. And what wargaming is you have an operation that comes down the pipe, and you sit down with your squad or your platoon, whatever your element that you're operating with, and you give your operation order. And it's like, we're going to go here. We're going to do this. These are our supporting elements. This is the location of the target. And you go through everything that you need to know to conduct the operation.
Mm-hmm.
Then you go through what we call wargaming and say, okay, if en route to the target, what if one of our helicopters goes down?
Then what?
Then what? Well, then we need this element to address and secure the crash site. Then we need this element to continue on with the mission. Or, hey, you know what? We don't have a big enough element to continue on the mission. So now the crash site would become the primary operation. And you go over that with coulda, shoulda, wouldas, like what ifs about everything, every aspect of the operation. What if this route is compromised? What if this bridge is blown? Do we have a secondary route? Do we have a tertiary route? And you go through all of the what ifs. So when you're on target or you're en route to target, if something happens that was not foreseen or was like outside of the scope of the operation, you may have not experienced it firsthand, but we've thought about it before.
Mm.
And thinking about something is actually building a repetition. Even though you didn't physically go do it, we thought about it. People need to be wargaming about the choices that they're making, about their hard lines, about where they stand on stuff. Because if you just show up to work one day and they say, oh, hey, the nurse is here, you got to get the vaccine or else you're fired. It's like, you're going to be emotionally charged. You're going to be caught off guard. You're going to be like, you're not going to be ready to address or confront that situation in a calm and concise manner that's been clearly thought out. So I'm telling everybody, if you're a cop, if you're a first responder, any profession really,
Mm-hmm.
the things that they're asking you to do and the way that they're asking us to behave. If you're a police officer and you get called, you get dispatched and it says, hey, there's a gym open on 127th Drive and it's in violation of the governor's orders. I'm going to need you to respond there and shut them down. What are you going to do if you get that call? And that's not out of the realm of possibility. That happened all over the nation for the last year.
Right.
And we're going back into it. They start with the mask mandate, which just got implemented, was it yesterday?
Yeah.
Like a new statewide mask mandate. And we're going to go back into lockdowns. And guess whose gym won't be locked down? Mine. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so I defied it last time, and I'll defy it this time. And how are you going to respond if you're asked to confront me? And you better think long and hard about it and come to the right conclusion. Because if you're a police officer that doesn't support the people, but supports this tyrannical government, you've chosen your side. And I actually am shocked that we haven't seen any situations play out like that. Because how many gym owners did we see getting taken out in handcuffs? You know?
Yeah.
We saw it across. We saw people getting taken out of like salons in handcuffs.
I know.
Jiu-jitsu academies in handcuffs. Unless you're Nancy Pelosi's salon, then you can stay open and not have a mask on.
Right.
You know, it's appalling the stuff that we're seeing and the stuff that we've accepted. But I'm thinking, and maybe this is just wishful thinking and I'm hopeful, but I think Americans have had enough.
Well, so one of the questions, this goes back a little bit ago, like business license. The whole concept of having to ask the government for a license to have life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is insane to me.
Of course it is.
Like, hey, sir, may I please have a business? May I please sell food?
Can I please have people come to my gym so I can teach them about fitness? Will you allow me to do that? Fuck you.
Yeah.
I'm going to do it regardless. That's what I told my wife when labor and industry is threatening our business license. I don't care.
What is that license?
Yeah, it's a Washington State business license, and I'll burn that thing, and I'll continue to have my gym open. If you don't like that, come and do something about it. Physically come and do something about it and see what happens. And that is not an empty threat.
Yeah.
I was bringing my body armor and my Wilson Combat AR-10 that's outfitted with infrared lasers and have night vision goggles. Like, dude, I was a special operations soldier. Come and fuck with my business and see what happens. Or just leave me alone and let me teach jiu-jitsu. That's your two choices. And that's a conclusion that I've drawn. And like when it was bad for a while and we were getting hit up by L&I, people say, we've got reports you were training. And I wouldn't even respond to them, right? I'm not even gonna have any type.
It's not worth the energy.
Yeah. If you want to come and do something about it, come and do something about it. And no one ever came and did anything about it. And thank God, because I'd be dead right now. And again, dude, that's not tough guy talk. If I'm not willing to defend my liberties and my rights with my life, I wouldn't be able to look at myself in the mirror.
Yeah.
And so think about how crazy it is that we've arrived at a place in history where I'm thinking I might have to die today just to go teach a jiu-jitsu lesson. Like,
and you know
it's insane.
So opposite spectrum is, why are you even taking a stance like that?
Yeah, and the reason I'm taking a stance like that is because if you don't stand up for the little things, you don't stand up for anything.
Yeah.
Like every little aspect of your life should be worth dying for. Because if it's not, and maybe not every little aspect, but every little thing that's important to you, your business, your children, your liberties, your home. Like if someone tried to kick you out of your home, is that worth dying for? You know what I'm saying? Like, There's things that men have been dying for since the beginning of time.
Yeah.
And you and I aren't exempt of that. People think that we are like, oh no, this is America.
Or we're so far advanced from that. Like, no, that's
I mean, did you see
so
the video going around the internet today of the nurses ripping like an 8-year-old child out of the arms of a father in Australia?
Okay, I wanted to talk.
And the police tackle that guy. I'm going to put a notice out to Snohomish County Sheriff right now. If you ever try and take one of my children out of my fucking arms, we will be fighting to the death, and I will probably win.
So, talking about wargaming, game theory, or whatever you want to call it, let's play this out. The minute that I take a stand and say, I don't want to take a jab, is the minute that a government counteraction and says, okay, well, now you're an unfit parent. Now you're putting
Yeah.
your family at risk. Now you're putting your children at risk, and you don't have the right to be a parent.
Mm-hmm. And
Like,
bro, this isn't a conspiracy theory. This is a possibility on the horizon. If anything has shown that like the crazy shit can happen, the last 24 months have shown that. You know?
Yeah, there's over 20,000 kids in a stadium in Australia getting the jab.
Yeah.
And the government said, don't worry, your kids are safe.
Yeah, we have police officers there. Well, I was a police officer, and half the people I worked with were incapable, fat, incompetent. Like, don't tell me how I need to be concerned for my children's safety. I'll handle that myself.
Yeah.
You know? Think about that though. You know?
It's scary. And I'm not going to get ruled by fear. Fear is not the king of my life.
Well, and I tell people this is like once you can overcome fear, you're a free person.
That's freedom.
That's true freedom. And I was blessed. I mean, it was a blessing in disguise to spend so much time in combat that the thought of me being killed doesn't register as something that I'm afraid of.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because I've confronted that on different occasions throughout my 20s that it's like, all right, if I get killed today, then I'm getting killed doing and fighting for something that I believe in, right?
Yeah.
I believe in the mission here right now 10 million times more than I ever believed in anything I ever did overseas. And I risk my life daily over there for that shit. So, and dude, I am not some anomaly. Every single person that I know from the special operations community, Rangers, SEALs, Delta guys, Force Recon Marines, that was my community. I used to deploy and live with those guys for months and months and months at a time. They all feel the same way. So you want to keep pushing a generation of warriors that you, as our government, sent us to the other side of the planet to fight and kill human beings, and now you think you're just going to shit all over everybody? Good luck.
Think twice.
Good luck.
Okay.
And bro, and I'm the last person to be calling for violence or saying it's time to take the government over. I'm just simply saying is when we reach the point where you think you're going to take my children from me or you're going to throw me out of my house,
yeah,
let's do this.
Yeah. So one of the things that I stand upon is I believe the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
I have a relationship with Jesus Christ. He is my Lord and Savior. You know, to death do we part, or even join even closer. You know what I mean? Like, we're taking it to the end. What I see in like this Christian narrative of the church is like a lot of people are like, you know, the where we derive the Constitution, where we derive government, actually traditionally comes from religion or faith. I don't need, because religion is man-made, faith is you know, universe and all this. So we have these people that are like, no, you know, the Bible says love thy neighbor, and it means take the jab because that's what love is. And, you know, it's like, no, loving yourself, because when you're on an airline, they say put your mask on yourself first before you put it on your child or anyone else. And, you know, there's this conflicting thing. Where do you derive your moral compass? Because this is one of the things that we started chatting about before the podcast, and I was like, okay, save this.
So this is an interesting question because when I was fighting in the wars, I was 100% atheist, right? And I just thought I'm nothing more than an animal that's an advanced animal, and I have all these aircrafts at my disposal and weapon systems, and I'm just playing this game. And when I get shot in the face one day, because that's my destiny, it's just like turning the light switch out, and there's no more Greg Anderson. That was where I was at on, just because of all of the shit that I used to see and how dark the world can be. I was like, dude, whoever thinks that there is like some loving God directing all this isn't seeing what I'm seeing, isn't watching 4-year-old kids get blown up by IEDs. Like, the world's dark as shit. The world is not a loving place. But that's because my reality, my microcosm, was surrounded by darkness, and it was surrounded by hate. And so it was easy for me to arrive at that conclusion. But my friends on my team that were religious, they used to ask me that. They're like, well, why do you want to be a good person then? Why do you want to stand for things if you don't believe? in a religion. It's in and people draw a conclusion like you can't be a good person unless you are religious,
Mm,
right?
right.
And what I tell them is like, listen,
That's so judgmental.
when I was 5 years old in kindergarten and they say treat others as you want to be treated, I don't need a relationship with Jesus to understand that, okay, if I treat this person poorly, they feel bad. That doesn't make them feel good. If they treat me poorly, that makes me feel bad, and I don't like that. So why don't I treat them kindly? And then they will reciprocate that and treat me kindly. And it's like, this shouldn't be, it shouldn't take some like universal energy or some like omnipotent being for us to understand that the best path forward is respecting each other and being kind to each other. Because it makes you feel pretty good when people are nice to you.
Yeah.
So why can't I understand that I should give that energy back, right?
It feels good when someone smiles at you
Yeah,
rather than
exactly.
frowning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I felt like I became, or I was on a journey of like kindness and happiness and trying to do the right thing just because so much of my professional life was about darkness.
Hmm.
And I would come home and I would want to be kind to people and I would want to make people smile. But then fast forward a few years and I've had enough experiences now where I 100% know, and this is just me and my experience, there is something bigger out there than the physical beings and our physical bodies.
Yeah.
There is something. I'm not going to tell you what that is because I don't understand what it is in my own heart. And I think for me to tell you what I think is true, that's just an opinion, right? But I do know now, I've had enough experiences where it's like psychic connections with people.
Hmm.
I've had people, I've had friends call me at 3 in the morning when I'm sitting up feeling depressed, saying, hey,
I was just thinking about you.
I know something just came over me and told me you're in a dark place,
Mm. Wow.
and I'm thinking about you.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff started happening to the point where it's like, okay, whatever this is, there's more to it than meets the eye. I don't know if we're connected with like antennas or something, but there's a bigger picture and there is a spiritual side of being a human being. And it's exciting. Like it's cool to see and grow. And as a 40-year-old man, and this is just in the last couple of years, I've started to learn this side of life. It's like there's more than what we know.
Hmm.
And is it Jesus? For me, I don't know yet. Is it one of the established religions? Did somebody get it right? I don't know yet, but I know there's more. And
Yeah.
it's a pretty cool place to arrive at.
It's fun.
Yeah.
This is what
That's right.
makes
Yeah.
life fun. Is that, and I had to go to a leadership emotional intelligence training in San Diego, California, 2 years ago. I flew down to San Diego 6 times, 6 different weekends, and went through this experiential training to work on emotional intelligence and leadership and all this. And what I learned through this is that the universe is rigged in our favor.
Yes.
100%. Now, the universe doesn't just automatically, it's not an ATM and oh, I'll take 20, I'll take 100, I'll take.
No, you got to give it. You got to give into it.
Yes.
And then it gives back.
Yes. And on this podcast, I always talk about you can't outgive good.
Mm-hmm.
That's my stance. You can't outgive good. You put good out into the world, it's naturally going to come back to you. You don't put out good for the reward. You do it because I believe that's what we're called to do.
100%, bro. And I've been learning that. And that goes into what I was saying about having like a lot of experiences. This last year, since I've taken my life in a new direction, right? I drew hard lines. I wargamed. I said, if this happens, I need to do this. If that happens, I need to do that. I drew hard lines and it cost me my career. It cost me my job. And I was like, I'm like you. I have 3 small children. I have a house. Like, what am I going to do? My gym only had 20 members. It was more like a club,
Right.
that, me and 20 of the guys, we get together and we grind at night and we beat each other up because I enjoy fighting and I enjoy martial arts, right?
Yeah.
My gym has grown by 5 times
Wow.
since I was fired. The people that I've been connected with, I've built a network of people nationwide. And it's not just, and I don't like to like give people value based on like how many followers they have or what they're worth. That's not the value that I'm finding in these people, like Andy Frisella, for example. I don't care how much money he makes. I don't care how many followers he has. When I'm sitting down eating dinner with him, I'm learning so much about myself
Mm.
and about leadership and about how to be a good person. And he's just one example. And I've been traveling all over the nation this last year, getting connected and building friendships with people that has changed the trajectory of my life. And then I'm buying fish and we walk by each other in a pet store and we connect. And now I'm sitting in your house and we're creating a product that has the potential for somebody somewhere to hear something and say, you know what? I think I might do this, or I think I might do that. This stuff can't just be random.
Mm-hmm.
It can't be.
No.
There's more than meets the eye here.
No
And
coincidences.
yeah, and it's cool to see. I've been getting, because my podcast is getting pretty big, and I've gotten a lot of emails lately. And I didn't share this with you yet, did I?
No, I
So
don't think so.
I got an email last week, and it was a guy saying, "Hey Greg, I need to tell you a little story. I was diagnosed with stage 4 terminal cancer." And he goes, "Once I told my friends and my family that, a lot of people kind of wrote me off already, because
Mm.
it's like, well, he's going to die."
He's not worth investing in anymore.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right? And he goes, "I felt myself more isolated than I've ever felt in my life when I was told that I only have a finite amount of time left." I mean, we all have a finite amount of time left, but you know what I'm saying,
Right.
right? And he goes, "I started listening to your podcast." And he goes, "A lot of what you talk about is like putting yourself through adversity to build your strength as a person,
Mm-hmm.
and believing in yourself, and overcoming adversity, and believing that you can succeed and success find success in situations where most people would think were dire, and all these different little things that I just randomly talk about because it's been my life."
Yeah.
He goes, "You gave me the strength to believe in myself through this treatment where I was diagnosed terminal, and I'm beating it now, and I'm going to live." And he goes, "I
Yes.
want you to know that I'm living because you gave me camaraderie through the darkest time of my life." Dude, I like, even telling the story, I'm welling up a little bit. I read that email and it made me cry.
Yeah.
And it's like, sure, we're sitting in your office, plugged into this little electronic device having a conversation. But the reality of what podcasting has become is there's somewhere, or someone somewhere that needs to hear this, and it has the potential to have a profound impact on their life. And that makes this powerful.
Yeah.
This is a real thing. This isn't just two guys shooting the shit. And you never know what you're going to say or what someone else is going to say that's going to have a profound impact on their life. And I get that on the other side of the coin too. The people that I listen to, which is bizarre that a lot of them have become actual friends of mine, like Andy Stump and Mike Glover and Andy Frisella. All these people I used to listen to and look up to,
Mm-hmm.
now I can call them.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? It's weird. And again, it goes back to like what is really going on here.
Like,
But it's like you can impact people from afar.
you know what I think also attributes to this is that when people finally give in, and when I say give in, I mean surrender.
Hmm.
When they surrender to what and how they're actually supposed to be. And when they do that, the floodgates open.
Bro, I say it all the time on my show. I'm like, you need to be authentic to who you are in your heart,
Yeah.
right? And the words that are coming out of your mouth need to be congruent with what you feel inside.
Right.
That doesn't mean you're going to like me. That doesn't mean you're going to agree with me. Like if you try and appease everybody, you'll appease nobody. But as long as you are who you are authentically, what you will build is the strongest friendships and the strongest bonds, because real knows real, right?
Yes.
And like when people see people being real, that attracts them.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't care what side of the political spectrum you're on or what religion you are, like you attract your tribe by being authentic to who you are. And I think that's one of the biggest, probably the biggest issue with American politics is there's no authenticity. It is, what can I say at this moment to garnish the most votes,
Yeah.
you know? And I always bring up like Bernie Sanders because I mean, I am right leaning. I'm a conservative person. I would never vote for Bernie Sanders, right? But the words that are coming out of his mouth is congruent with his heart.
Yeah, he believes it.
He believes it, and he has drawn a line, and he stands on that line. And people are listening, probably cursing me out right now. But the truth is like, you know where he stands on stuff.
Yeah.
That's what I want out of a politician. I want to know where you stand on stuff so then I can look into your opinions and your policies, and then I can base on whether or not I want to support you,
Yeah.
right? They're making it harder and harder to do that because these people will play. I mean, you had Kamala Harris and Joe Biden arguing with each other, calling each other names. She was calling him a racist during the primaries.
Yeah.
And now you're his VP? So you're telling me you're comfortable being a racist's vice president? Like, nothing they stand for, they say, is based in authenticity. And people see right through that,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, the Bible says, "Let your yes be yes and your no be no."
Yeah, I like that.
Take a stand. And I've been having a couple conversations with pastors lately because and I haven't even actually gone to church in over 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that my church is the church. My time with my God is my time with my God, and how I get my community is through other different avenues. I have issues with the actual church, whether it's nonprofit status or the fact that they closed their doors and said, "No, we're going to shut down when everything else shut down." Like, there's a lot of stuff that I don't agree with. But as a man, when it came to me knowing my friends always know that, oh, Johnny Mac, he loves 4th of July, he loves America, he loves freedom, he, like, every year we have the 4th of July party, like, this is what I stand for and I say. And then I got jury duty,
Mm-hmm.
and I hate masks. They bring up childhood trauma for me. The mask represents everything evil in this world to me,
Mm-hmm.
and that I've faced in my childhood. Not having a voice, not being able to speak, not standing up to the bully, everything. And I got called to jury duty, and I was like, this is it. I cannot live with myself and look myself in the eyes in the mirror if I don't actually take a stand. Now, because I have put a mask on to go to work since Inslee mandated students had to be back at school. And I was like, okay, it's 2 months. I'm going to get to the summer.
And then we can put all this shit behind us. That's what we're thinking, right?
Yeah. And then it's like, okay, then I'll reevaluate. We'll
Mm-hmm.
take, and even though I knew where I stood and I didn't like it, I was like, I gave in, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's hard for me to say that because,
But bro, that's the reality of I mean,
everyone in this.
you have to weigh your options, and you have to understand, like, what is the hill I'm willing to die on? What is that?
Yeah.
Is it your mask in your classroom? Well, maybe not. You know
No.
what I mean? And it's okay, because you have to arrive at that conclusion, and then you have to be willing to fight for it. But you have to navigate through the waters to understand what conclusions you're going to come to.
Right.
And we've all done that. And anybody listening that says otherwise, they're not being honest with themselves.
Mhm.
Like, for instance, I've been traveling the country a lot.
And I
When
was
I'm
gonna
on
ask
an
you-
airplane, they tell me I have to put a mask on. And so one of my buddies, do you follow Mitch Aguiar?
Yeah.
He's rad, dude. He's become one of my best friends over this last year. He got in a mask argument on a plane, and he's put on the no-fly list now, right? For that airline. So each airline can have its own no-fly list, and then there's also a federal one which encompasses all the airlines. But that's for like terrorists, you know?
Which we now are,
Yeah.
because we go against
Yeah, of course.
COVID guidelines, as said by the Department of Homeland Security.
And so it's like, we all have to play this game to a certain extent. It's like, if I want to travel to St. Louis and have dinner with Andy Frisella, that's important to me, right? If I'm going to do that, I understand that if the airline tells me to put a mask on and I don't, then I'm going to lose my ability to travel. So, like, how much of the game are you willing to play? And for me, there are people that don't fly at all anymore because they're not willing to play that game. And that's awesome. Like if that's a conclusion that they've come to. But for me, the networks that I'm building, the conversations that I'm having, the people that I'm having meetings with, I think is important enough
Mm-hmm.
that I'll play your little fucking game now because I need to be building these contacts. I think that
Risk versus reward.
exactly.
Right.
And I think the network of people that I've built in the last 24 months is actually going to have a big impact on our society one day. And that's why, like, okay, I got to play this game a little bit. I got to be tactical, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And being tactical doesn't always mean you're doing exactly what you want, it means you're doing what is necessary.
Yeah.
And so, again, you're doing what is necessary for this moment in time while you kind of navigate these waters and see what's next.
Right.
And it's being smart. It's not being a coward. It's not being a pussy. You have to play this game because it's very easy to sit on Instagram and be like, you know what, fuck everybody. But if you take that approach, what you're doing is you're severing your network and you're severing your capabilities. And so, yeah, be
Yeah.
tactical. Play the game a little bit, you know?
Okay.
It's
So
a long game. That's where we're at now. It's a long game.
that's encouraging to hear because that was two things. I was like, okay, what does Greg Anderson do when it comes to flying?
Yeah.
And then I'm not proud of myself for doing what I've done, and yet I did it because
Yeah.
I weigh the risk of my family. However, when it came to jury duty, I was like, okay, it was my choice to go to a job that required a mask.
hmm
Jury duty is public service.
Yeah.
You don't get to tell me what I can and cannot do when I am here on my own accord. And
Yeah,
and
send me out of here then.
yeah, and so we stood in line outside, and ironically, my neighbor right here across the street had got summoned to the exact same jury duty randomly.
Man, that's crazy.
And so I'm in line, and I got there early because I was like, okay. And I talked to my wife. I talked to my counselor at the time. I was like, I had a counseling appointment the day before, therapy appointment. And call it whatever you want because I want to make myself a better person.
Yeah.
And, the Bible says in the multitude of counselors, there's safety. And I told my therapist, I was like, hey, if I don't show up to my appointment tomorrow, I might be in jail. Just know this, but I'm taking a stand.
Yeah.
And so jury duty comes, I line up, and they're like, okay, you have to put a mask on to go inside. I go, I'm not putting a mask on. They're like, then you can't do jury duty.
Okay.
I go, okay. And they're like, okay, then we'll mark you as present and you're dismissed. And I turned around. I said, thank you. I still got a check in the mail for my commuting miles of what it was.
Yeah.
And I walked by and my neighbor looked at me and she was like, where are you going? I was like, I've been dismissed. Why? Because I'm not putting a mask on and all these people in outdoors are standing wearing a mask. And I'm just like, for me, this is where we have to identify our judgment. Like, we shouldn't be judging other people for their choices that they're making, but we need to know what's right for us.
Yes. Well, and here's the thing about the mask. The mask is the same as the vaccine for me to a certain extent. Well, I shouldn't say the same because I'll be tactical with the mask. I won't be tactical. I will not.
You can't be tactical.
I will not take the vaccine under any circumstances. And not even because of the potential for adverse effects, for principle.
Mm-hmm.
Pure principle. You do not get to tell me what to do, period. But going back to the mask, if you like wearing a mask, cool, right? Like,
Right.
I don't have any issue if people want to mask up because they believe that that makes them safer. And if that's the data that they've read and that's the conclusion they've drawn, cool. But my problem is with everybody that wears a mask just because they're told to when they don't want to be wearing a mask. And you know how we know that most people don't want to be wearing a mask? The day that King Inslee lifted his edict, no one, you go to a grocery store, 1 in 20 people had a mask on.
Right.
Right? So you didn't research and draw conclusions based on medical data or talking to your doctor or whatever it is. You were simply doing what you were told. Because if I was wearing a mask on Thursday today because I felt that the virus is so dangerous that I need this barrier, Friday morning, if Inslee says, you know what, mask mandate is no longer implemented. Well, I'm still wearing that thing because I believe this is what's going to keep me safe.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing for businesses. They all were enforcing the mask, but the day that he lifted his mandate, they're all done enforcing the mask. And it's like, does anyone think for themselves? Does anyone have their own opinions? Or are you just doing whatever you're told at any given moment? And I was so far the opposite. Like, I mean, my gym has 340 members. There's no masks in my gym, right? Well, one person came in with a mask one day. And I remember thinking, like, okay, like,
Hold your tongue.
I need to tell that person that there's no fucking masks in here, but I'm being hypocritical if I say that. Because true freedom is you do you do me, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I let them wear their mask. I didn't say anything because who am I to tell that person what to put on their face or take off their face?
Right. Are we living in the Middle East all of a sudden?
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
And so the only reason I was compelled to say no mask in here is because I do believe that these masks are being used as a control measure. I believe that the masks are something that is almost like a metric to see how compliant people are. And bro, I'm wired non-compliant. That's just who I am, right? And it's like, so when I see that, there's a part of me that's like, oh, get that out of my facility,
Yeah.
you know? But if you want to be authentic and to freedom,
and
you do you and I'll do me.
And if you want to stand for everyone,
Yeah.
that's like one of these big things is some people are only standing for some people.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Well, true freedom is standing for everybody.
Yep. Regardless of our differing of opinions, like obviously there are some hard lines that I do not support. For example, like I was talking to Sal Frisella, Andy's brother, and we were talking about like the LGBTQ community and the gay community, and it's like, dude, I went hiking with one of my gay friends a week ago. Like, I don't care what you do in your bedroom. And Sal goes, as long as it's not with a kid, right? And I was like, good point, right?
Yeah.
There are hard lines that if you think that this is how you want to live, fuck you. You're not my people, right? So that does exist. And it exists in lots of ways. You know, people that like, let's say like you're a spousal abuser or something like that. Like, you're not my people.
Mhm.
Fuck you. So there are plenty of hard lines on how people conduct themselves that I am not, like, we can't share the same space. You're not my people.
Yeah.
But those are the exception, not the rule. I don't think most people are wired evil like that. We just have differing of opinions. And I think most people that have differing of opinions should be able to come together and come to the conclusion that, dude, we're all different and we share differing opinions. But that's what makes this country great, dude.
So the Bible talks about iron sharpens iron, so the countenance of one friend to another.
Uh-huh.
And I've always, and I'm just having this realization right now, is and a lot of it's like, we're there for each other. I'm going to help you stay accountable. You're going to help me stay accountable. But at the end of the day, I think what it really is talking about is being able to come together and converse with people that don't think like you
Yeah.
or have the mindset like you, so that I sharpen you and you sharpen me, and it's better to know where we stand and grounded in who we are
Of course.
than it is to be blowing with the wind.
No, that's exactly right, man. And that's, I mean, it goes back to what I was saying. That's why I like people that are authentic. I don't care what you're authentic about, but when we sit down and we talk, you know where I stand, I know where you stand.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how does that serve me and how does that serve you? And like that may sound like, I don't know, like almost maybe egotistical or selfish.
Yeah.
Like, how do I serve you? But make no mistake about it. The relationships that we build with other people, they need to be self-serving. Like, how many times have you had a friend that just kind of feels like a leech?
Yeah.
And they just want to cling to you and they want to suck and suck and suck, but the energy's only flowing one way.
Right.
They never reciprocate that and give it back to you,
Yeah.
right? And so, I mean, I've arrived at a conclusion in my life now where it's like I'm cutting people out if they don't help me rise up, if they don't build me up, if they don't make me a better person. That doesn't mean that they have to agree with me or we're on the same page and everything. It's like, if I'm going to invest time or energy into this person, it needs to serve me and my family. But the chances are, if this energy that we're sharing serves me and my family, my energy is probably serving you and your family.
Yeah.
And now I'm building a tribe of people that when we hang out and we invest time with each other and we partake on these different like business deals or adventures or family gatherings, whatever it is, we're all serving each other.
Yeah.
And it's powerful, dude.
Dude, it's powerful.
It's powerful and it's real. And for the first time in my life, I have a circle of people that like
you can actually count on.
I could text someone I could text a handful of people right now and be like, "Hey, cops are at my door and they're going to the SWAT team's coming to get me. Please raise my children and love and take care of them. Roger that, got you."
Mhm.
Like, and I know that that's true, right?
Well, so here's one of the things that you keep saying. You're talking about serving. I know, because I'm a huge proponent of making sure you use correct words. Words carry power.
Uh-huh.
And so you're saying serve. It doesn't say slave.
Yeah.
We
yeah.
are not slaving to other people. We are
Mhm.
serving, which means we have the choice. We are choosing into something rather than forcing into something.
Yeah.
And like as simple as that is, I think that's actually forgotten in society.
Well, I always go back to like primal needs, primal desires, like how people lived when things were tribal,
Yeah.
right? And I think about that human experience for a lot of ways that I live my life now. I feel like during those times, life was full of adversity.
hmm
And so if you were cold, you better go cut a tree down and chop wood and build a fire and then build a shelter. That's a lot of adversity. That's a lot of hard work. If you were hungry, you better go forage or you better start stalking animals. Again, a lot of hard work, a lot of adversity. If the rival horde on the other side of the mountain is coming for you, well, you better get together with some warriors and train and come up with a plan. Like that that was the human experience for a long time.
hmm
And so that tribal connection that people had where they would sit around the fire and they would talk about their day, they would talk about what they went through, they would share stories, the elders would build up the younger generation and like teach them the ways. All of this stuff is kind of lost.
Yeah.
And I feel like we need to go back to that because that is where people build connection. And I use the word serve, but really, you can say that it serves me and it serves you, but really it serves the collective.
Yeah.
If you don't have a collective, you can't survive. If you didn't have a collective, you got eaten by a saber-toothed tiger. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like we're social.
There's power in numbers.
Yeah, there's power in numbers, and we're social creatures by design. Now, are there some outliers that go live on the Arctic tundra for 10 years by themselves? Yes, but that couldn't be me. I know that I need my tribe, and now that I know that I need a tribe, let's find that tribe.
Yeah.
And it's been one of the best journeys that I've ever been on.
Yes.
You know?
I just sent a text yesterday to a few select people, and I was like, okay, I think it's time that we have a group meeting.
Uh-huh.
We need to actually, let's play it out. Who's going where? What are we doing? All this stuff. And there's this call that I feel upon my own life is to return to a simpler life.
Mm-hmm.
The message of this podcast is transforming lives through primal adventure. I
Yeah.
believe that primal adventure transforms us into being a better person. At the same time, I feel like a simple life, a simplicity is calling to this world, and for the longest time, I love the trades. I love blue collar. I have something to give you. You have something to give me. It's called the trades.
Uh-huh.
We trade,
Yeah.
I don't have to make money because I know I have this and you have that and we both need those. So let's trade it and call it good. Here I am as a school teacher. I'm like, I can educate your child.
Your trade is knowledge, right?
My trade is knowledge.
But my trade is war fighting.
Yeah.
And I think about this stuff because I literally have a group of people that we are planning on forming a small society out in the middle of nowhere if we need to, right?
Yeah.
If the world
Not saying we want
Yeah.
to either. That
Yeah,
just
but
if we need
this is what I tell my family and my friends though, is that if the world falls apart
Hmm.
and we are forced to band together and live on this compound with 35 people, and you don't have your internet anymore, and you don't have your iPhone, but what you're going to have is community and camaraderie on a level that you didn't know was possible.
Yeah.
And I tasted that a little bit in war, where like the men that are on your right and your left, it starts to become everything. And if we get to experience that with our children and with our community, and you're a hunter and you can teach the people how to provide food. My expertise is war fighting. I can keep our perimeter safe, and I can put bunkers and guard towers and interlocking sectors of fire.
My wife's a
Your
nurse.
wife's a nurse. I have a buddy who's a blacksmith. I have another buddy who's a doctor. I have another buddy that's like good at woodworking, another one that's an electrician. Like all of us collectively come together and we create something that sustains life for our families. I'm telling you right now, that will be the most meaningful experience of our existence. That's why it doesn't scare me. That's why I tell my wife, if things go bad, and that's what reality turns into, make no mistake, it will be hard. It will be demanding. We'll be cold sometimes. We'll be hungry sometimes. We'll feel scared sometimes. But life will be the most rewarding it's ever been. Because what do most people like? They clock in at Boeing, they work 10 hours, they rivet aircrafts, and then they go home. And I'm not taking anything away from people that do that, right? Because that's where our society is at. That's how we feed our children right now. But if you step outside of that and you find who you are on a primal level, it's going to be way more rewarding.
Hmm.
And dude, that's why it kind of excites me. That's
Yeah.
why it kind of excites me, you know?
There's a guy, Tim Douglas, awesome human. I've had him on. We did a little soulful series episodes,
Uh-huh.
and his stance in his podcast is called The Inspired Way, and his mascot's the buffalo, and it's all about facing the storm.
Mm-hmm.
American buffaloes, when they see the storm building up off the Rockies, they don't turn and run like cows. Because that storm's gonna catch up to you. They turn and face it, and they run into it. Because when you run into it, you pass through
Let's
it
just
so
I was
much
just gonna say,
faster.
let's just get this over with.
Yeah, and
Oh, I love that analogy,
oh,
dude.
dude, it's
If
beautiful.
I take nothing else away from today, I will be using that. I love that
Yes.
because that's powerful. And
Yes.
it's a powerful analogy of how we should be living.
Yeah.
You know?
And when that first buffalo turns and faces a storm and starts running, others join.
Mm-hmm.
And
Courage is contagious, dude.
I'm getting goosebumps right now.
Yeah.
But this is the thing. And so going back to the whole like golden rule revolution or golden rule, like treat others the way you want to be treated, do things to people the way you want them done to you, is like this is the concept of being neighborly,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
Of being smiling, having conversations with people because you don't know when you might need to knock on that door and say, I need you.
Of course.
Or are you the person that pulls into your garage and shuts your garage door before you even get out of your car?
Yeah.
Because
We all have those.
yeah,
Yeah.
I have those around, and it's like, okay. I mean, not that we're drawing a line in the sand because I'm not trying to cut people out.
But I don't
want
know
to
you at all.
Yes,
Yeah.
you haven't provided any opportunity for us to actually become.
Dude, I think
in
about
sync.
that. Like we live in a society now where we may be laying our heads down on our pillows to sleep at night, literally 3 feet from another person in some condo or some apartment complex that we've never even met.
Mm-hmm.
When in history could you sleep within 3 feet of another human being and not know that person's name?
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's the human experience is getting it's changing so rapidly that I don't think we can keep up. You know what I'm saying? Like who we are and who we're hardwired to be and how we're hardwired to live and how we have lived since the beginning of time
Yeah,
has dramatically shifted inside of one generation.
yeah.
And so it's like, are we surprised that people are depressed and people have anxiety and people have ADHD and people are becoming addicted to opioids on a like a fucking biblical level?
Mm-hmm.
Like the human experience is starting to go haywire because I feel like we're living outside of how the lifestyle that truly serves us and serves our community. And then, bro, that's why You think you're going to have any of that stuff happening? You think anyone's going to be depressed and need like medication if you're out in the forest? And like the only thing that matters is if we get this, we need to get our shelter done before November,
Right.
you know?
Yeah.
And I saw that overseas. Like, I got a good story. I tell it on every podcast that I'm a guest on because I have a very, very wealthy friend who you're going to meet soon because we go to his house for barbecues
Yeah.
probably once a month. And he has a mansion in Montana that's 6,000 square feet. It's one of the most beautiful houses I've ever been to. And we were there on vacation last month, and we came home, and my house is 2,200 square feet. It's in a middle class neighborhood. It's a nice house, but that's what it is.
Right.
And my daughter is like, my 9-year-old, my middle daughter goes, "Why does our house suck and your friends' houses are way better than ours?"
Mm.
And I said, "Because you don't have any perspective. That's why you think that."
Yeah.
All right. And there's no way you could have perspective because you're a 9-year-old girl that grew up in Lake Stevens, Washington. But I said, I'm going to tell you a story. When I was on the other side of the planet in Afghanistan, the entire family's house was not the size of our house. It was the size of the room that we're sitting in right now. And there was no floor. It was a mud floor, and the walls were made of mud. And they didn't have a family of 5 like we had. They had a family of 12. All right. So you need to understand, like, whatever you think is bad, there are people that are living much worse,
Mm-hmm.
but they're happy about it.
Yeah.
And so, like, you don't see people being on Prozac in the Middle East or in Somalia. Like, when your day to day life is challenging and dangerous, your downtime and your family and your house, all that stuff is cherished.
It also makes me wonder, like, like ADHD or these different things, and I'm not knocking it because once again, I'm not judging people. However,
We've created it, in my
it's
opinion.
created.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
So, like, it's not actually, if you were to put that person in an environment in which they had to worry about food, shelter, water,
Yeah.
would that even be on their
It wouldn't
mind?
even be on their mind. It's like the idle hands. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
we're not dealing with the realities of the human existence that we've had to since the beginning of time,
Mm-hmm.
and that's part of what's making us go haywire, in
Yeah.
my opinion. And it's like, that's why I'm such a proponent of, I do a lot of stuff to consistently microdose adversity into my day.
Yeah.
I sit in ice. I crank my sauna up to 200 and I try and sit in there for 30 minutes. And that's not an enjoyable experience. It sucks.
You don't try, you do.
Yeah, I do. I do. I mean, there's actually, I'll admit it, there's a couple times when I've had to just kick the door open and run out because I'm like getting nauseous, right?
Yeah.
But it's like, I also do a lot of jujitsu because jujitsu touches you on a primal level because you have another human being on top of you trying to strangle you, and you have to figure out a way to beat them. And if you don't, guess what? You lose. And even though it's with friends and we're in my gym, make no mistake, the primal things that are firing in your body, this feels 100% real because since the beginning of mankind, if someone has your neck wrapped up
Mm-hmm.
and you're losing blood to your brain, fight or flight hormones are starting to get dumped, and you are starting to think, I'm getting killed right now.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing when I sit in ice. If you fall through the ice when you're out fishing 2,000 years ago, that's a death sentence unless you can get to somewhere and rewarm your body.
Yeah.
And so when I sit in the ice, all of those fight or flight chemicals are going off, and it's like, this is dangerous.
Yeah.
Well, I need to overcome that mentally, and I try and not feel scared.
Yeah.
And it's like all those little things that you do, I think are important to being a balanced version of yourself.
I'm a huge proponent of running.
Uh-huh.
And I think running is my ice bath. Running is my jujitsu because
Bro, I love that.
because running, people are always like, "Oh, I hate running." Well, why? Because you don't like work.
Yeah.
Like you don't.
Yeah.
Well, it's hard. Well, why? You know, like it literally is just putting one foot in front of the other at a pace in which is not walking.
Yep.
You know, I don't care what speed you're going. It's just you're doing it.
Bro, I love that you said that because I used to be an avid runner, and I am hopeful that I will be again. The orthopedic surgeon says otherwise.
Oh.
I have a knee that they say needs to be replaced, which I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to kind of let it play out and see where it goes. But I've always told people my entire life, I was never interested in football or basketball or like anything that was almost like a team sport, fighting and running.
Head
Because
games. It's all head.
Fighting and running are the two most primal activities because since the beginning of time, your survival depended on being good at one of the two, right? And it's like, I can either beat this guy
Or I can run away.
or he can beat me, so I need to run away.
Yeah.
And like, there's no shame in avoiding a fight with someone that you know can beat you so you can live to fight another day, right? Now, there are hard lines. If someone's coming into your house and your children are upstairs, you and I are fighting to the death. And I might lose, but that doesn't matter. I'll fight a fucking grizzly bear if it's coming up my stairwell, you know? But there's no shame, again, in being tactical. Bro, there's a infantryman, break contact, it's called. Like, we're taught it in boot camp, and we hone that even in special operations. Break contact means the opposing force is too big. We need to break contact, regroup, reorganize, and then decide, are we going to launch a counterattack or are we going to skirt around and not make this an issue?
Yeah.
You know? And so, yeah, that's just a part of the human existence. And you got to be good at fighting or running. And if you think those things are stupid, well, good luck in the apocalyptic post-America that we're setting.
I will say this. I want to come and I want to learn jiu-jitsu. I've never wrestled. I mean, besides having a brother and, you know, all that type of thing, I want to learn self-defense, advocacy, and, you know, we got to be able to protect ourselves.
Bro, I'll tell you, and you should come to my academy tomorrow night. Jiu-jitsu is one of the most eye-opening experiences you will ever have because we tell ourselves this narrative of how capable we are. Because I got in tons of street fights as a kid, tons of bar fights, and like I was a good athlete and I was strong. I thought that meant I was a good fighter. And then when I started training with guys that are actual fighters, they will treat you like a child. And it's like, there's this guy that I have 30 pounds on. I'm 200 pounds. I training with a dude that was 170 and would do anything he wanted to me. And yeah, I almost had a 400-pound bench back then. And none of that matters.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, strength, athleticism, speed, your cardiovascular fitness, all of that you do take those things into account when you're fighting, right? But it's not the end all be all. What's the end all be all is your technique. And once I've learned that there's other men out there that can literally do whatever they want to me, I was like, I have to be all in on this journey. And so I geeked out on fighting it's going on 2 decades now.
Wow. And
I wouldn't trade my fighting capabilities right now for $10 million. You said, hey, give me all of your jiu-jitsu back and I'll cut you a check for $10 million. Because I wouldn't be who I am without it. I couldn't be who I am without it. I have to have my level of jiu-jitsu to project myself the way that I do, to have the confidence that I have in myself, to be the leader of my family, to be the leader of my academy. All that would be taken from me. And you can't put a price on that, you know?
Man, that's so incredible. Okay, we could go on forever.
Bro, we can do follow-up episodes, man. I live 23 minutes away.
I think we're going to have to. One of the things I kind of want to just wrap it up on this, because as a father, we have a responsibility to our wife, ourselves, our wife, and our children. You talked about the story of your daughter saying, you know, our house sucks compared to that house and all this. So my question is I am a huge proponent. This is exactly why I took my children out of public school. Because I do not want the innocence of my children robbed.
Yes.
So how, in your experience, and whether it's right or wrong, like just give me what you think. Because what I do believe, and I preach on this podcast, is that perspective trumps opinion.
100%.
all the time.
Yeah.
And so experiences are perspectives rather than it just being,
Yep.
well, this is what I think. At where do we draw the line when it comes to protecting the innocence of our children? Because they don't get it back once it's taken.
No, and that was a big deciding factor for me to pull all three of my kids out of public school as well. And it's my kids started coming home with these weird questions and these weird ideas. And I'm not even saying it's being taught to them by the educational system, but it's just the culture of kids these days. And my oldest came home one day, and I was talking to her, and she said, "I don't know if I'm going to be a lesbian or not when I grow up." And I was like, "Well, what do you mean you don't know if you're going to be a lesbian? What are you talking about?"
Mm-hmm.
And she goes, "Well, a lot of the girls at school say that when they grow up, they think they're going to marry a," and she was 10, mind you, right? They think they're going to marry a woman when they grow up instead of marrying a man. And I said, "What would make you say something like that?" And she goes, "Oh, I don't know. Just a lot of kids at school are saying that they're probably going to marry a woman instead of a man." I said, "Okay, I want you to understand something right now, okay? You brought home sexuality into the conversation, so we're going to talk about sexuality." I said, "When you grow into a young adult and you desire intimacy, you desire partnership, you desire sharing your physical body with another person,
Mm-hmm.
whenever that day arrives, I think you're going to know who you want to share that with. And whatever path you choose, I'm not going to judge you. But just know, as a 10-year-old kid, you never have to think about that shit again.
Yeah.
You know?"
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
It's funny. We're talking about the innocence of kids. I can hear I can hear my kids in the background.
I
right now.
always tell people on my podcast when my kids scream or I hear my dog bark, I'm like, "Guys, just so you know, I do real life too.
Right.
All right? I don't have a Joe Rogan studio. I have a house."
Right. I'm trying to squeeze it in between nap times.
Yeah,
and
but
different things.
no, like, and I've arrived at a place where I'm just real with my children. I'm real with them about the threats and the potential dangers. I'm real with them about their sexuality. I'm real with them about politics, because I feel like if you try and hide that from them, that they're gonna discover it from another route. But at the same time, I have to balance it, right? Because I don't want to scare them. I don't want to make them think about like all the what ifs, you know?
Yeah, have some couth about it.
But when they come home, and my daughter was saying, everybody at school hates Donald Trump. Well, now we have to have a conversation about Donald Trump. And that's what I told her. Can anybody articulate why they hate him? "Oh, no, he's just a bad person." Why is he a bad person? Like, unpack this for me. And my point is to her, I'm like, I'm not trying to defend Donald Trump right now. I want you to be a critical thinker. If one person says this person sucks, does that mean that person sucks? Let's unpack this. Let's figure out why this is happening. And I wasn't seeing that in the public school. They're not teaching critical thinking. They're just coming home with all these weird narratives cast upon them. And yeah, it's not working for my family anymore.
Yeah.
But the perspective thing is, I'm trying to teach my children that you can teach perspective to a certain extent through, say, documentaries, photographs, television shows, but you can't teach perspective to the level that it can be taught when you're standing somewhere and looking at something with your own two eyes, you know? And so that's my goal. As my kids get older, I want to help them see things and help them have those experiences, to help them become grounded in reality, because a lot of Americans are not grounded in reality anymore.
No.
And it's like, I went and did mission work last year in Mexico with a church group with John Youngquist.
Yeah.
And I built some houses with him. I love that family, by the way. Shout out. He has adopted me. He says I'm his third son. But and some people thought that was weird because I'm not a Christian. And it goes back to what we talked about. I said, I don't have to fall in line with a specific religion to know that this person doesn't have a house, and we're going to provide one for them.
Yeah.
You know? So
Power of community.
yeah, exactly, dude.
When you lost your job, America stood up for you.
It was crazy,
And
dude.
yeah, how much? Just, I mean,
$500,000.
$500,000.
Yeah, we got $500,000 from a GoFundMe because people were inspired to see someone willing to take a stand against the narrative. And like, you know, some people hate to see success. We got emails like, "What the fuck are you going to spend all that money on?" And it's like, Why are you angry? And here's the thing I always tell people. I said, you can go look at the GoFundMe. It's public. 99% of the contributions were $5, $10, $20.
Yep.
People weren't going like above and beyond and like breaking the bank to support me. They forgo Starbucks that day to say, hey, I think what you did was honorable. Here's $5. But that happened enough times that it turned into 500,000. And it's like, wow,
Yeah.
you know? And I've also had people say, they're like, because when I tell people you need to draw hard lines, you need to stand up for what you believe in, some people have combated that and said, well, we're not all going to get a GoFundMe like you did. And I said, do you think I had any inclination
Yeah.
that I was going to get a GoFundMe? I was standing on what I believe to be the moral high ground. That was a result of that. You can't plan for that kind of stuff.
No.
I've even had people say that you planned it so you could get a GoFundMe. And you know what my response is to that? Hey, if I'm smart enough to create a viral video that makes me $500,000, then stop hating on me.
Yeah.
But the internet decides what goes viral.
Right.
No, but you can't. We could sit here for the next 10 days and be like, all right, let's mastermind the next viral video. That's not how it works.
Yeah.
Because people, like, goes back to what we say, real sees real. When they see something that they identify with, that means something to them.
Yeah.
And you can't create that. You can't manufacture that. That has to be real, and that's why people identified with it.
Man,
it's
beautiful.
fucking rad, dude.
Dude, freedom on, baby. Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's go. Okay, so Greg, for those of you who are new to knowing you off of this podcast, this episode, you have your own podcast, but where else can people get in contact
so
with you or follow
my
you?
biggest like social media is Instagram, and that's really it. I don't do anything. I have a Facebook, but I keep Facebook more like friends and family.
Yeah.
Instagram, it's Granderson, G-R Anderson 33. And then I also have the podcast, which is called The Endless Endeavor. And I thought that was a good name because it's like, I think it's necessary to look at life as exactly that. It's an endless endeavor. We don't know what's next, but we got to stay on the grind and we got to make it happen. And so that's on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, YouTube, everywhere you find podcasts.
Love it. Love it. Listeners, I hope you have been filled with courage from this episode and you have taken a lot from it. At the end of the day, love it or hate it, but we get to be true to ourselves and true to our families. And you get to decide what you hold to be valuable and important and worth fighting for. Because if you don't know what you want, you'll fall for anything, right? So everybody, thank you so much for tuning in this episode. I'm your host, Johnny Mack. Freedom on. And as always, stay soulful. If you enjoyed today's podcast, I'd love it if you could go ahead and give this a rating as well as subscribe. Also, you can check us out on Instagram under the Soulful Hunter Podcast. Make sure to tag us in pictures and posts and use the hashtag Soulful Hunter. To find out more about the Soulful Hunter Podcast, go to soulfulhunter.com and be sure to follow the podcast as we are going to be bringing you a lot of great information, insight, and changing lives through primal adventure. I look forward to connecting with you on the next episode. Stay tuned and stay soulful.